This episode is sponsored by Agent CRM. If you're in sales and tired of paying 3, 4, or 5 different companies for your email, CRM, funnels, phone, follow-up automation, check out Agent CRM. It's an all-in-one tool that combines all that you need to reach out, nurture, and close your clients. They've got weekly support calls so you can get up and running in no time. Get a free 14-day trial by going to the link below in the show notes. Hey, what's up, everybody? My name is Dan, and this is the Intentional Entrepreneur Podcast. I have a very, very special guest with me today. She is a member of the Business Failure Club, a contrarian on how to generate referrals, and supporter of the entrepreneurial dream. Through her program, she provides a roadmap to take control of your business. She's a 3-time entrepreneur, author of the award-winning book, Generating Business Referrals Without Asking, and the host of the Roadmap to Grow Your Business podcast. I do want to welcome to the show, Stacey Brown Randall.
Thank you, Dan, so much for having me today. I am excited to be here.
I'm very excited to have you on as well. And I know the first time we chat, I am a fan of your work. I listen to your podcast. Obviously, I'm reading the book. I share your ideas and your content with my team. And today we're going to talk about what is and isn't a referral. But before we kind of get into all of that, can you share a little bit about your background, your business failures, and how you got to where you're here today?
Yeah, I think it would be really fun if the story was like, I woke up, I became brilliant in one day on one topic, and I became a success. The end. Like, it may be a very boring story, but that would be a pretty amazing story to live, right? For being honest. But it was the complete opposite of that for me. As you mentioned, I am a member of the Business Failure Club. I think it's one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about helping other small business owners and solopreneurs just avoid it, because I know exactly, exactly what it feels like to have a business. And mine was just over 4 years. It hadn't quite made it to the 5-year mark before I found myself like a member of the club. Business failed. Now I'm back in corporate America, sitting on a leadership team and dealing with all those fun things that happen when you're just an employee. And for me, it was like, okay, I've got to figure out why my first business failed. Okay, these are the things I've learned, and then apply those as I started my second business, and which is, of course, the business that I have now. And I think for me, it was a lot of the ability to accept the fact that, yes, my first business had failed, but then also to be like, okay, yeah, but there's lessons to be learned here. So what can I take out of this and what will serve me, moving forward? I think people ask me all the time, they're like, you're so open about your business failure. I'm like, yeah, I even had my own membership badge created. I went all in, and they're like, yeah, it's kind of embarrassing. And I'm like, it is, until you get to the point where you've learned from it
Mm-hmm.
and you're like, yeah, no, not so embarrassing anymore, when you've
Mm-hmm.
like taken all these lessons from it, right? And
Mm-hmm.
you've just learned from it. And so what I learned from that business, I applied with the second company that I started, which is the one I have now, but I was doing something totally different. I was a business and productivity coach, and I would work with real estate agents and attorneys and financial advisors and, small business owners. And I grew that practice really fast. In my first year, 112 referrals that I didn't ask for. And my clients were like, what are you doing? And I was like, oh, let me teach it to you. And that became what is my business today. It was sheer necessity, though. It was, I
Mm-hmm.
cannot join this club again. I don't need a 2-time membership in the Business Failure Club. I don't think you could ever say it's not in your future again, but I was like, oh, it's not going to be in my future that soon. And so I decided to just apply things and be a little bit more, risky and daring with the things that I would be willing to try. And then I realized it was the stuff that just focused on other people and relationships that
Mm-hmm.
ultimately served me well. It was like the least risky stuff that I did, served me really well as I was starting my second business. And now I teach that strategy that grew my second business to people all over the world. We work with business owners in like 11 or 12 different countries all around the US. All around the world.
All right, very, very good. And as I've been reading this book, you make a really good point, and about asking for referrals before we kind of get into the nitty gritty. So I wanted to bring up this particular issue because um, in a lot of sales training, asking referrals is part of it, but I think for a lot of people there is some uncomfortableness to having to sit down with a sales appointment and go, oh, by the way, do you know 3 other people that you can refer me to? Kind of a, and you mentioned in the book, it's like a cold ask.
Yeah, it's
And
terrible.
and
I mean,
I've been on the other side too. I've been in the sales where I was the potential client and they asked me, and I'm like, I just met you like an hour ago, and I don't know if you've built enough rapport with me that I can give you the names of 3 of my closest friends or business colleagues
it's
that you can go talk to them.
it's such a tired, overused, and bad tactic. And it's
Mm-hmm.
still taught today. I mean, if you go
Mm-hmm.
to Google right now and you type in, okay, Google, tell me how to get referrals, you're going to see a whole bunch of advice that's going to come up from how you ask. Right? One of my favorite articles that probably still comes up, if I had to guess, probably because I look at it from time to time just to get a good laugh, but it comes up and it's like 25 ways to not look desperate while asking for referrals. I'm like, if you need 25 ways to not look desperate, it's because you're desperate.
Mm-hmm.
And the truth is, the advice that's out there about asking, usually when you're told to do something you don't want to do in sales, the typical response is, well, you've got to be okay with being uncomfortable. And there's something wrong with you. And you need to push through and you just need to do it. But you hit the nail on the head, Dan, when you said, I've been on the receiving end of that and I didn't like it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
because that's the fundamental truth. It's not a bunch of people who are like in sales, right, or in a position where they have to try to bring in more clients or trying to bring in more referrals and them thinking, oh, this is awkward. It's awkward because you know how it's being perceived and received on the other end. And I'm like, why would I want to go through my days putting myself and the other people in that awkward situation? But it has been the dominant strategy of how people teach referrals. And for a long time, I just thought, I mean, in the beginning, I was like, I wonder why that is. And then as I kind of started digging in about my methodology and how it works and the way it looks and the scientific pieces and the science piece behind it, I really started realizing I'm like, I think it was just the easiest answer. Like, there's so many people that I know that teach sales and they're like, this strategy, this strategy, this strategy. And oh, at the very end, we add in this piece about referrals. I've even had sales trainers tell me, but we don't really know that much about them. So we just tell them, we give them some scripts and tell them to ask. And then we're done with the sales, the referral piece of sales. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I think that's just why it's been so diluted and it gets such a bad rap, I think, and sometimes because of the strategies that are taught around referrals that they're not working. And if they feel terrible, it's okay for you to call out the elephant in the room. Like, it could be because it is terrible.
Right, right, right. And today's topic, we're going to talk about what is and isn't what isn't a referral. And I know your book, you talk about 3 or 4. You kind of parse it down to 3 or 4 different types of I won't call them referrals, but kind of there've been about 3 or 4 different types of boxes. And so, can you share a little bit about what is and what isn't a referral?
Yeah, I think it's really important that we kind of start there, right? Because lots of people have opinions as to what a referral is. And there's a lot of times when I'm working with my clients and they're like pulling through, right? Where they're looking through their data and determining who are the people that refer them. And they have all these things in here. And I'm like, first of all, a referral source has to be a human. And I'm like, that's not a human. That's the name of a networking group. Like there's just all these things that I think because we take terms and like you mentioned these other terms that are so closely linked to being a referral and the terminology is used interchangeably that we've diluted the actual definition of what a referral is. So when people tell me, oh, I got a referral, but then they're actually describing just an introduction or word of mouth buzz or a warm lead, I'm like, those are 4 different types, right, of prospects that show up, and you need to know how to respond accordingly. But it does start with exactly what your question is like, okay, so then what is a referral? Because it's not all these things that people think it is. And when a referral shows up in your business, it's got 2 components that 9 times out of 10, pretty much totally nothing else is going to come close to. And one of those is that there's going to be a connection. There's going to be a connection to you by someone that we call the referral source, which is another human who trusts you and knows the prospect who has a problem that they know you can solve. So that connection is going to happen between the referral source is going to connect you as the solution provider to the prospect.
Hmm.
The second thing you've got to have is actually a need identified. right? If I don't have any legal troubles ever and everything in my life is completely and totally buttoned up and everything looks perfect from my business perspective and my personal perspective, I don't actually need to have a conversation with an attorney, right? So there's got to be a need, right? So not only do I need to be connected, right, to this person that is actually a prospect, they actually need what I do. And that's another piece of the puzzle I think that people are sometimes missing. Like, I'll have a lot of people say, well, I just got a referral, I was connected to this person. I'm like, great, why were you connected? And they're like, I have no idea. I'm like, well, if there wasn't a need stated, you don't know who the prospect is. You could be the prospect. Now, you may be going to meet that person for coffee and they're about to sell you. I was like, because you don't know the reason behind it. You can be connected and be told, like, oh, great people should know great people, get to know each other, right? Like, I actually just had one of those land in my inbox. And it was just like, hey, you guys should know each other. And I was like, that is perfect if it's just an introduction. But if there's like a hidden referral in there because they think I need to hire them or they actually need what I do, and that's not stated, we don't have that need. And then, of course, the other side of that is I have a lot of people come up to me, Dan, and they're like, oh my gosh, I got this great referral. I'm just waiting for them to contact me. And I'm like, then it was word of mouth buzz. It wasn't an actual referral, because that's not to say that none of these things can't flip themselves into a referral naturally. I mean, I teach my clients how to know how to flip that into, so you're not just waiting around for that person who was given your contact information 3 weeks to finally get around to calling you to hire you. But it's that idea of recognizing what it is and what it isn't, and then how to respond accordingly, and then understanding what it looks like moving forward with the prospect that is referred.
Yeah, I think it's important that you mention identifying the need, because I've received the gamut of all those, hey, this is Dan and this is John that you like should meet, which is like, okay, I'm not really sure why we should meet, but all right. To the, hey, this person needs help with the, setting up a new company or franchising, and you should connect. So I think it's really important to, I mean, this is how we identify them, right? And then and respond accordingly. But I think it's important for us as business owners who rely on referrals to make sure we identify them and tag them, so to speak, and then um, respond as needed or as necessary to get them to identify themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, like what I teach my clients is when you have a referred prospect, your whole sales process gets to change. Like,
Yeah.
and it's fabulous, right? Compared to the person that you meet at a networking event that's now you're going to go meet for coffee. And whereas you met and you connected enough to be able to say, yeah, let's go grab coffee, right? You're still feeling like this is like maybe not a cold person you're talking to over coffee for the first time, but lukewarm. With someone who's referred to you, they don't even know you and they
Mhm.
trust you because of what they understand their problem to be and how you can solve it, and the person they trust that's connecting them to you. So, it's one thing to know, hey, I think this is a referral, but actually it's an introduction or word of mouth buzz. I need to respond accordingly to flip it into a referral. But to your point as well, it's also like, but if it is a referred prospect, I get to do a little dance, happy dance differently than I have to if it's just any other type of prospect that shows up in my business. So I mean, a lot of people are like, okay, the definition's pretty easy and clear. And I'm like, yeah, but it's the application of
Right.
it
Right.
that really matters, because that helps you make your life easier, which of course is what I'm all about.
Mm-hmm. And I just thought of something, and I hope we kind of touched it at the beginning, but maybe um, I want to ask about the why referrals are good, and you kind of touched a little bit on trust, right? It's like, hey, this person that trusts me is willing to essentially put their name on the line, right, for me to provide good service to them. So there's essentially a transference of trust for me to do a good job for the referral. But also, I've heard it put it this way too, and it's from I don't know if you know who Jay Abraham is. Yeah, so he says, referrals tend to not negotiate on your fees. They tend to buy more or hire you more, and they tend to be of higher quality or high caliber type of client. So for those reasons alone, is good enough to build a good referral system through a program like yours, so that you are not getting these very poor leads through whatever sources you're getting them through.
Right. Yeah. The way we talk about why referrals, right, is it's kind of qualifying and quantifying the
Hmm.
happy feeling you feel when you get a referred prospect. You're like, yes, because you instantly know, right? This person's, they're already going to trust you because they trust the person who's connecting them and referring them to you, which means when they trust you and they already know they have a problem. And so they're open to talking to an attorney about that problem, right? It means they are quicker to close, they are easier to close, they are less price sensitive, and they already value you before you've really even walked in the door to this conversation because of the fact that they were referred. I mean, the fact that someone can show up and be like, I know what my problem is, here's how I want to solve it. I heard you're the person to solve it. What's your fee? Okay, here, take my money. Like, I mean, does it get any better than that from that perspective of having that client referred to you? So, yes, I don't think there's any debate, to be honest. I don't think there's any debate in the industry of all the humans that teach referrals. I don't think there's any debate as to why we want them. I
Hmm.
think the big debate comes into, well, actually, how do you make them happen? Like truly understanding the scientific principles behind and why referrals happen so they show up, right? Quicker to close, easier to close, less price sensitive. And then how do you go about creating tactics and methodology and processes around that? That's, of course, where there are divergent opportunities for you to just figure out what your referral strategy is going to ultimately look like.
Yeah. Um, I saw this question. It was actually a webinar, and it basically said referrals are not a good way to scale your business. And on the surface, that's kind of a fair point, right? So I'm only one person. There's only 24 hours a day for me, and I can't be answering emails 24 hours a day on these introductions and referrals. Kind of, what's your take on using referrals to actually scale a business?
Yeah, so I love when we take extremely general statements and we just apply it everywhere.
Right.
Like it just fits everywhere. It doesn't fit everywhere. And so, and the reality of it is when I think when companies think about that scale mentality, like really, what are we talking about? Like,
Hmm.
how are we defining that scale mentality? Because I know, and I'm really clear, there are definitely industries in which my methodology is not going to work. So if I'm having a conversation with a SaaS based company and they're like, we need 1 million leads, I'm like, I'm not your girl. Like, I'm not sorry. Like
Yeah.
I'm not going to be able to help you with what you're looking for. But most of the people that I work with, professional services individuals like attorneys, financial advisors, right? CPAs, real estate agents, interior designers, like there's a relationship that's built while they do the work that they do, whether it's them or it's somebody on their team. And I think that's the piece that people forget. Like, I did some work with a company a couple of years ago, and they just came back and did a refresh with me for some of their folks. And it's like 5, 6, 7 financial advisors,
Hmm.
and that company's getting a ton of referrals. But it's because each financial advisor has their own strategy, right, and has their own process of mind that they're following. And so, yes, I'm never going to tell somebody, yeah, you get 30 referrals now. Let's get you to 3,000. Like, yeah, let's do it. I'm going to tell you that's not my strategy, right?
Hmm.
Because why do you need to scale? So there's an interesting formula I always have people do when they're trying to figure out what will this look like in my business. And the number one question, Dan, I always ask is how many clients can you handle?
Hmm.
And if you know you want to scale, how are you going to scale? Because if you're going to bring in more people, well, then of course they can all be working to get more referrals. Or when you bring in more referrals, you have people to hand them off to. But if you're going to be more like yourself and the paralegal, right, or a very small team, and you're going to stay as the rainmaker, the truth is you have capacity at which you can't take on any more work without doing something different to scale.
Hmm.
So the strategies grow with you, right? But at the end of the day, where I tell folks to start is like, well, you tell me, right? So I have lots of attorneys that'll come to me and they'll be like, hey, I get like a dozen referrals a year. And I'm like, okay, great. How many clients can you work with in a year? And it depends on what they do, right? If they're,
Hmm.
doing a will or an estate or business law versus if they're doing like litigation, right? Or they're doing, personal injury, right? The gamut of the numbers they tell me runs from I need like 20 cases a year to, oh, I could handle 80 to 100. So but those aren't words, those aren't numbers we use to define scale. I think when we think about scale in general terms, we think about thousands, right? And so when
Hmm.
people are thinking about referrals aren't going to get you thousands of new clients a year. You're probably not wrong. But most of the people that I work with don't need that. They're
Hmm.
like, if I had 40 clients in a year, that'd be amazing. If my team brought in 80 clients in a year, if we brought in, 220 in a year and there's four of us doing it. So I think first it's how many clients can you manage and how do you actually define scale and what does that look like? And the other piece that I think that comes into play is there's this there's this people being enamored with the idea of like how many
Hmm.
prospects am I bringing in, right? How many prospects am I bringing in through my Facebook ads, or how many prospects am I bringing in through my referrals, or how many prospects am I bringing in? Like there's this fixation on the number. My opinion is, who cares if you have a dismal closing ratio?
Hmm.
Right. So referrals actually allows you to close more people. I mean, I think about
Hmm.
like the 5 or 6 people who just and most recently came into any of my programs, whether it's my group coaching program, or it's any of my online programs. Right. And I'm just taking the last 5. They were all referred to me. They were really easy to get them to say, yes, take my money. Right. Because they understand. Right. And they've been referred to me and there's a trust level there. Who cares that I connected with like 50 people on LinkedIn last month?
Hmm.
None of those people bought, right?
Yeah.
So the idea, I'm not saying that they won't, and they do, but it's just different. And we all look at things very like, okay, let me just take this and apply it. But let's first dig into what those numbers actually mean to your business. So, how many clients can you work with in a year? And what does that look like, baseline versus growth trajectories? Those are 2 numbers you should know, right? And then it's a matter of, and if you brought in all those clients by referral, how many of them can you actually close?
Hmm.
Because there are people that I work with, they're like, I don't need more referrals, Stacey, but I need you to teach me how to close them better, because there
Hmm.
is a way to do that right,
Hmm.
and a way that's going to work to your advantage. And so I always tell folks, I'm like, sometimes this is in the nuances of
Hmm.
fixing and tweaking what we need to tweak. And other times it's because you don't even have a strategy. But yeah, I think we get stuck in the how big can the number be, when in reality, the question should be more about, well, what can you actually handle?
Hmm.
And then what do you want to do to make that number work?
Yeah, yeah, and I've you talk about processes. I've even seen it like kind of posed where if your sales process is good, then the close is easy, right? They've already been sold to you on your services before they've even met you, during the closing call. And so I think it's really important to, sales is a process, referrals is a process. And if the more, obviously, the more we get better at it, the higher conversions will achieve, even with less effort as well. Um, the next thing I wanted to ask and get your thoughts on is, in a lot of, especially in non-licensed industries, there's referral fees paid out. That's kind of the norm. Can you share your thoughts on what happens to the relationship when maybe you have a client where you pay a client a referral fee? How does the dynamics change, either for the better or the worse?
Yeah, the minute that there is dollars or some type of compensation changing hands, you've immediately and instantaneously commoditized that relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the thing. This, as you can imagine, is a constant debate that I see and that I constantly find myself in having, because people don't actually think about it in the way that I think about compensation. So my stance is that you should not compensate, pay kickbacks, pay commissions, pay bonuses, whatever, for referrals. Now, I say that with the caveat that if you're a real estate agent and you refer a client to another real estate agent, everybody knows the referring real estate agent is going to get a commission. It's like how the whole industry was built, right? And if you look at this from the affiliate world, right, everybody knows when it says, if you click on any of the links in this article, we're going to earn a commission, because we state it up front, right? This is an affiliate relationship. I will get compensated. Those are the things that what I call above board, and they're
Hmm.
fine. And if you use them in your business, good. I'm not telling you not to, as long as they're working for you. But those affiliate partners, right, or those people that you recognize are getting paid, I actually put them in a different bucket. They're not referring you,
Hmm.
they're sending you leads. Right.
Hmm.
They're a little bit more strategic, right? So whether you call
Hmm.
them joint venture partnerships, affiliate relationships, or they're just your strategic alliances, they're just different from your referral sources. The reality of it is, those that are above board, it's all disclosed. The client knows that payment is being made. My problem with paying for referrals is when we're doing it as like that kickback, right? We're doing it as the under the table, don't tell the client. And so I always turn the tables on things. And I'm always like, if the client were to find out that they were referred to you because you paid commission for them, would they still think they made the right choice in hiring you? Right. And that's what it all
Mhm.
comes down to. And I think that's how people can make their decision based on whatever it looks like for them, right? From a place of character and integrity and how they want to run their business. It's the disclosure factor that I think is the thing that's is a sticking point, right? So if someone was referred to me and then they found out later, right, let's just use you and I as examples, right? If you referred someone to me and you're like, oh my gosh, Stacey's amazing. You've got to go through her program. She's going to totally transform your life. You're going to have these referrals. It's going to be amazing. You're going to love it. It's going to be awesome. And they come into my program, and within their first 30 days, they find out, wait, Dan got paid to send me to Stacey. It doesn't matter how successful I am with them or how successful they are implementing my processes and procedures. There's a taste, right? There's a moment of a wait, what? And it has kind of like we've taken a hit, right? You and me in terms of how they view us because it wasn't disclosed up front. And so that's just my belief pattern when it comes down to when it comes to compensation. If you're disclosing it up front, good, go, do whatever, right? But it's not a referral at that point. If it's you're truly referring someone, I'm referring them to you because I trust that they can solve your problem, not because I'm receiving dollars to send them to that person. And some people will say, well, I think you can do both. Okay, if you think that you can send somebody to someone because you trust them and get paid, then why in the world wouldn't you just tell the client that up front?
Mhm.
Right. And so if it's all about the disclosure piece, and what I find about most bonus programs for referrals or commission structures or kickbacks, they're never telling the client. It is never buyer beware, right? And that's my issue with it. So, I mean, that's my personal opinion. And I do believe when a referral source hasn't asked to be compensated and then you offer to compensate that referral source for any clients they may send your way, I do believe in that moment there's a dynamic shift that happens in their brain where you've just commoditized the relationship. And ultimately, what that says to me is, well, I get paid to do work. So now you're going to pay me for referrals, and that feels like work. And referrals should never feel like work because referrals should feel like I'm helping somebody solve a problem. And how I'm going to be the hero to them and help them solve their problem is by referring them to you. You're the byproduct of the referral actually happening. You get the new client, which is great, but you're the byproduct of me helping somebody. And that we kind of create an interesting and an unbalanced dynamic there when we're compensating or offering to compensate for that.
Kind of along these lines, I know some professionals they want to appreciate the referring party, but for whatever reason, maybe laws or disclosure reasons, they're not allowed to compensate monetarily. What are some of the ideas you can and let's say the match isn't good enough where return referrals aren't possible. How would you guide someone on like, okay, how do you show appreciation back to the person uh, outside of the normal senses of compensation?
Yeah, so I think that's a really good question, and there's a two-part answer to it. So, number one is most people overlook the power and the impact a very simple thank you card, handwritten. Please handwrite this card, right? How impactful a handwritten thank you card can be when received, right? Like, so let me just, I'm going to use this as a kind of like an off example to explain this, but I recently had a birthday and I mean, I'm getting older. Let's be honest. Nobody gives me cards but my children and my husband. And even sometimes those are like, I'm like, did you even remember to sign the card? But my point is I got two cards from two people I wasn't anticipating. And one card came and it was from my insurance person. And my husband and I joked because I have talked about this for a decade. I was like, oh my gosh, I bet he didn't even sign it. I bet he used a third party to send it. And I opened it up and it actually had a handwritten note in it. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I remembered it, right? My birthday was a couple weeks ago. And guess what? I just told you about it. And now your whole audience. So obviously there's an impact there, right? And it's the same thing with one of my clients that sent me a birthday card. And I was like, oh my gosh, right? And she handwrote a note in there. When you handwrite a thank you note, there's a power and an impact that we usually overlook because it takes literally like a minute or a minute and a half to do that. So I always think the number one thing you should do when you receive a referral is to send a thank you. Never assume that you're going to have to refer someone back to say thank you, because it's not always going to be possible. The truth is, I think about all the attorneys that are in my programs that I adore, and those that then go on to refer me to like other attorneys to be in my program. I don't know enough people with legal problems to send all of them business, right? And so I would never be able to, hey, you refer me, now I'm gonna be able to refer you back. That is really hard, right, to even consider. And for most people, you're gonna fail at it. So the first thing is you've got to thank for what you just received. The second piece to that, and what I teach my clients, is you actually need a plan in place where you're going to take care of those referral sources in an ongoing way. And I don't mean daily, weekly, or monthly, because that's too much. And I don't mean once a year either. There's got to be a cadence and a rhythm to how you are kind of staying top of mind and being memorable and meaningful with the people who refer business to you. Now, this is the specific strategy that you read about in my book that I talk about for existing referral sources. If someone's not referring you, you can't do the strategy because I've never actually referred you. But if you have people who, existing referral sources, there is a way to have this continual taking care of them, right? Being memorable and meaningful, which means no, it's not phone calls or text messages every 62 days because your CRM told you it's time to reach out and say, hey, what's up, buddy? Right. And no, that doesn't mean you have to take them to coffee or drinks every single month. Nobody's got time to have drinks with you every single month as it is, right? So I'm not talking about, and I'm not talking about your e-newsletter. It's great. You should have a newsletter, but this is not part of your outreach to your referral sources. But it is things that are memorable and meaningful that allow you to stay top of mind, that also give you the opportunity to use what we call referral seed language that you're going to be able to plant during those outreaches. But here's what people think. They think, well, I've got 10 referral sources, and now you're telling me I've got to do these touch points, right? And we usually recommend 5 to 7, somewhere in that range in a year. And they're like, so now I got to do 50 or 70 different touch points throughout a year. I'm like, well, no one would hire me if I told you that's what you had to do, right? So this is 5 or 6 or 7 touch points that's done for actually that group of 10. And so that's why we build it out on a 12-month cycle so we can have the cadence. I'm not saying you can't be personalized with it, but the way I teach it to my clients and the strategy and the framework we use to develop what would be memorable and meaningful and top of mind and allow us to plant referral seed language is very, very specific. And so while we are doing it to all of our referral sources at one time, it feels personalized when you are receiving it. And it's why, like, I work with like an attorney, Catherine comes to mind, and she's like dozen referrals a year. That's awesome, right? Here we are 6 years later, and she's grown every year, right? From 12 to 20 to 40 to 52 to 62 to 70, now 82 referrals last year. Every year in January, she knows, okay, I'm probably going to get somewhere north of 70 to 80 referrals, because here's the strategy I follow every single year to make that actually happen. And it's a sustainable way to grow your business. But back to the scale question, Catherine doesn't need 1,000 referrals. She needs what she has, and then she needs to improve her closing ratio always, right? And then she needs to be able to handle the work that comes from those clients, however her team is set up to do that.
And you mentioned handwritten cards. I even would go farther as not using electronic stamps and buying the live first class stamps from the post or Costco or wherever you get stamps.
Yeah, mine are really pretty. Like, and they have the best versions and options if you will just take time or send somebody. You don't have to do it
Yeah.
yourself. Send somebody to the post office and be like, buy me some really nice stamps. Yeah.
Yeah. I have a funny story, and this just happened a couple of days ago. So I do that particular methodology. Every time a referral comes in, I handwrite a card back to the person that referred me. And I think I was kind of writing a lot of cards because the person that wrote me back, it says, hey, Dan, you sent me a card, but it was blank inside. So I stuffed it too fast.
You were like, I've written it out. I'm sure of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think my
I
hand's cramping up.
I went to a client that was writing some cards, and she was like, it's just a lot of cards I have to write. And part of me was like, shame on you, right? Like, stop your hand for saying, oh, I'm like annoyed that I have to go thank people for sending me business, right? Like, but I get it. I've sat down to write a bunch of cards before too. I'm like, oh my God, this is going to take forever. I told her, I was like, open a bottle of wine or whatever your favorite beverage is. And I was like, and then just enjoy the process. She said she got up the next morning. She's like, I had to rewrite some of them because by the end of that bottle, I couldn't read my own writing. And I'm like, well, I'm thankful you didn't put them all into the envelope then and just seal them
Yeah.
up and mail them
It kind
before
of
you
trails
actually
off right at the
checked.
end, right? So you
Right.
can't read the writing. So
Yeah.
Awesome. We're having a great time here with Stacey Brown Randall, generating business referrals without asking. So we're coming to the end here, but before we close it out, we always ask our guests our rapid fire questions. So just answer the first thing that comes into mind. Are you ready?
Yeah, this is dangerous. I'll try to keep it
All right.
G-rated.
Okay. This is unedited. There's no FCC here, so we're not unregulated here. All
Oh,
right.
that's good. Yeah.
All right. So, who do you look up to?
Oh my gosh, that is such a good question. There are a lot of people that I would say that I look up to, but recently I'm reminded, and this is going to sound kind of crazy, but recently I'm reminded of how often I actually sometimes look up to my children when they parent me, when I'm not being a very, very good parent. And that reminder of being intentional about choices and decisions that impact other humans and not just what feels good to me in the moment. I have 3 teenagers. For
Okay.
anybody that's curious
Yeah.
about why is she looking up to her children, I have 2 rising ninth grade boys, or in
Hmm.
ninth grade now, and a seventh grade daughter. So yeah,
Very good. The teacher has become the master, or the student
right.
has become the master now. All right.
Just
Um,
temporarily.
temporarily.
We
Yeah.
have to put them back in their places eventually.
Of
Yes.
course. Of course. All right. What's the best business advice you've ever received?
Oh, so this is actually something I say to my daughter pretty often. And I read it somewhere, to be honest, I can't remember where, but it's a question I ask, and it's, were you brave today? And sometimes I have to remind myself, like, the hard thing you want to do, the email that will be tough to send, the conversation you don't want to have, the business decision you have to make to raise your rates or do something, like whatever it is, to change how you work with clients, like all those things. I think they ask of us to be brave. And sometimes it's easy to be like, I'll be brave tomorrow. I'm just going to push that off. But just by asking the question, were you brave today? Or what could you have done today that would have been brave? It's always a good reminder.
Got to eat that frog
First thing in the morning.
first thing in the morning. All right. What's the best business book you've ever read?
Okay, one.
You have to choose one.
Oh my God, like that's like impossible. Okay, so I would have to go with Profit First. So
Hmm.
there are a lot of business books I have read that I love. This is probably the one I read. I mean, I read this one probably like 4 years ago now, but it continues to make such a huge impact in my business. I really appreciate that model of how you think about and how you manage your business finances. So the book is Profit First by Mike Michalowicz.
Yep. One of my favorites as well. Um, if you had to do one thing over again, what would it be?
So, when I think about my business and the structure of my business and how I help and who I get to help, I just think that a lot of things happen not in my timing but in God's timing. So as much as
Mhm.
I am going to answer this question, I kind of have to remember I may not going to wanted that, but that doesn't mean it was going to work that way. Just the things I knew I needed to do and then put off doing, whether that's like the website redesign or enacting Profit First in my business. I mean, I knew about it long before I did it, right? Like
Mhm.
just doing those things that your gut was like, yes, you should, just not waiting to
Mm.
do those things
Mm.
and doing them. I mean, there's always a million and five things to do every day, but sometimes making time for your most important things is legit what's going to actually move you forward. And there's always someone else going to yell, scream loudest, that's going to need you some email. It's going to be flashing at you, but doing
Yep.
the things you know you need to do when you need to do them.
Um, have you heard of the term 3 feet from gold?
I haven't.
Okay, so the idea is the story goes there's a prospector who goes out to California and in search of riches, mining gold, and he buys all the equipment and he digs and digs and digs and digs and he just doesn't find anything. So he gives up, sells his equipment to the next guy, and that guy only digs 3 feet and hits gold. So my question is, how do you know when you're 3 feet from gold or when to pivot in your business?
So for me, big decisions that I have had to make in my business, whether it was the decision to stop my first business and hang up my business shingle, and go get a job, or to keep making changes in this business that I'm in, I rely a lot on my gut because that's where I feel
Mm-hmm.
like God speaks to me and the decisions that I need to make, and in prayer. It doesn't mean they are any easier to make. It doesn't mean that they come naturally or easy to me. But I think just really recognizing that I've been at this long enough and I just have this sense. I just trust that. I just trust that if there's something I'm supposed to be doing, I'm going to get the sign, and to trust what's happening in my gut as well.
All right. Jesus take the wheel sometimes, right?
Yes.
All right.
Amen.
And finally, what's the biggest challenge in your business today?
I would say the biggest challenge in my business today. Okay, you know what? It's like been the challenge from day one. It's all technology. Like, I mean, every day it's like, really, I have to learn a new piece of software because, my business, whereas I do have a group coaching program where I actually hang out with my clients on a weekly basis with our group coaching sessions, a lot of actually the training and the teaching I teach and in my online programs, they're all online. There
Hmm.
is so much tech that runs behind the scenes in my business, and I'm not a fan of tech. Like, it's just not my thing. So for me, it's like, oh, wait, I have to learn how to, like, now it's like, oh, you need to learn how to set up an Airtable. I'm like, do I? Do I really have to? Like,
Hmm.
it's just more technology for me. There's so much, there's so much tech I'm good at now. I don't even give
Hmm.
myself credit for. But I would say that for me to grow my business and continue to deliver the experiences I want, a lot of it does come down to technology, and it's not my love language. And I am not great at it. And I'm usually why I'm delaying something is because I'm like, I don't want to hit the button and break everything.
Yeah, yeah. Good thing technology is one of the things you can bring on someone to do.
That's very true. That's very true.
All
It's
right.
funny because my IT company called while we were on this together. So I can go deal with some more technology things when we're done.
All right, here we're hanging out with Stacey Brown Randall. Thank you so much for your time. It was an awesome show, so valuable. If our guests want to reach out to you, how can we connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So we keep everything like really transparent and really open right on the homepage of the website. So it's stacybrownrandall.com. If you don't land on it, more than likely you spelled Stacy without the E. So stacybrownrandall.com, you're going to find information on the book, on the podcast, our articles. I always kind of just say it's like, where do you want to consume information on how I
Mhm.
teach referrals? Because I am different from 99% of the people that are out there about referrals. And most people need to learn a little bit more before they actually want to make that decision to say, yeah, and now I want to work with you. So definitely go to the website. There is like a whole page on the website. You can find it from the menu bar dedicated to just freebies, like just
Mhm.
resources. There's a referral ninja quiz you can take. There's some calculations you can do. Just all kinds of good stuff that we have that's on our website. And of course, it starts you on this journey of deciding how do you want to grow your referrals. And if my strategy is the way you want to do it, then there's more information on that page about how to work with me as well.
All right, we'll put those links in the show notes. Thank you again so much for your time, and hopefully we can talk again soon.
Yeah, I look forward to it. Thanks.